It's that time again. The notebook is out. The notes have been made. We're going to break down another fight on the KSI card. And this time, it is the co-main event. I'm super excited for this one. We've got Faze Temperrr returning to the ring after his brilliant performance against King Kenny. And we've got Slim, who's been drafted in at short notice, but he's an ideal opponent, and I'm going to tell you exactly why. So, Faze Temperrr, coming off his last fight, he won by decision over King Kenny. And he fought a brilliant fight. Honestly, he was so much better than I was expecting. I know that he's obviously practiced martial arts and stuff in his career before, but stepping into a boxing ring for the first time can be quite a daunting experience, especially the fact that he came over to London, so he had like all the home fans cheering for Kenny against him, which is pretty crazy. And I was very impressed by how good he was technically, to be honest. They fought a brilliant fight. We've got Slim, who's been calling for one of these big fights for a long time, and he's finally managed to bag himself one. And I really think if Slim can put on a good show at 2-3 weeks notice, that he will be on future cards. Whether he wins or whether he loses, I can only see his stock rising if he puts on a good performance in this fight. So, gonna go over those 3 points of how they get this done. I'm gonna start with Faze Temperrr. So with Faze, he needs to keep the range that he kept against Kenny. He was fantastic. He was coming in, landing his shots, moving out, moving back out of range, and he'd done that effortlessly throughout the fight, and he needs to do the same again. It's going to work. It will work well again. Obviously, Slim is a longer fighter than Kenny, but people kind of forget that Kenny is actually a long fighter for his size. But obviously, Slim is going to have a longer reach. But at the same time, I do think Kenny looked more technical than Slim. Slim has got a tendency in some of his fights to start getting a bit wild. So I think it may actually be easier for Faze to keep that range in this fight, as long as he doesn't let Slim kind of smother him and push him into the corners of the ring. Another good thing I think for Faze is obviously to come out, keep that range, but stay composed, because Slim has took this fight on short notice. My feeling is that obviously if this fight is a 6-rounder, he's going to gas out. He's simply not going to last the amount of time. I think he's in generally good shape, like walking around, but it's not the same. Slim likes to throw combinations, he likes to throw volume, and you can't really do that if you haven't been through the training. We've seen clips of Faze Temperrr going on his runs each day, so we know he's put in the graft. He was meant to be fighting Blueface from a long while ago, so he's definitely trained for this fight. Faze Temperrr, yeah, needs to stay composed, kind of ignore all of Slim's antics. We've already seen in the face-off video, Slim is going to try and rile Faze Temperrr up. I don't know if it's going to be possible, because Temperrr seems like quite a chilled guy, so I'm not too sure. But I think Slim's going to come out the blocks fast, and then he will slow down in the later rounds. And that's where Temperrr's going to need his composure, and that's where he's going to be able to pick those shots off and take over in the later rounds of this fight. My final point, and I would be very surprised if Faze Temperrr is not already thinking to do this. The guy's coming in on short notice. His gas tank's already going to be questionable. Let's go to the body. Let's take the wind out of Slim and let's go to the body. So those body shots are going to pay dividends, especially if he starts landing them in the early rounds. By the time you get to the 3rd, 4th round, Slim is really going to be feeling it. He's going to be gassing out in there. And then that's when he's not going to be able to defend those shots from Temperrr very well. Those are my points for Temperrr. I just think he kind of needs to just do what he does. From what we saw against King Kenny, I just don't see major differences that he needs to make in this fight. I just think the body shots are very important, and I just think he needs to stay composed, which he looked in the last fight, and yeah, do his thing basically in there. For Slim, it's more of an interesting one, because obviously Temperrr he's a good opponent. Slim's coming on short notice, but he couldn't refuse this fight. He needed to get on one of these bigger cards. He's been fighting on those Dubai cards where he fought this guy called NA Productions or something, and he absolutely wiped him out as a mismatch, and then he knocked out his last opponent in quite good fashion, to be fair, but the levels of opponent haven't really been high up until this point. So what does he need to do? He needs to force the pace early. I don't think Slim is going to be able to stick in there for 6 rounds. So if he can go in there and win the first 3 rounds and maybe nick one later on after he's maybe took a couple of rounds off, I think that game plan could work for him. I just don't see him having the power to be able to knock Faze Temperrr out. Honestly, I just don't see it. But I don't think at the same time he's going to be worried about Faze Temperrr's power. It didn't really look like there was anything that wobbled Kenny in that fight or really rocked Kenny. So I think he can definitely come forward in those first earlier rounds and then look to maybe steal one later on if it does go to points. Another thing that he does very, very well is to actually taunt his opponents. He loves to wind up his opponents, and you saw against Ryan Taylor, he got under his skin and obviously he bit the bait. Will Faze Temperrr bite the bait? I don't see Faze Temperrr obviously attacking Slim, but I mean, will he lose some of that composure that we know that Temperrr has? That's going to be very important. Slim will be taunting him in the ring. He'll be putting his arms behind his back. In the lead up to it, the press conference, he'll be saying all kinds of stuff to try and get under Temperrr's skin. And I think that's a good way for Slim to try and get Temperrr to fight, maybe a bit emotionally, try and really hurt Slim, and then Slim can capitalize on those mistakes. Because I think for Slim, he wants to turn this into a dirty fight. He needs to dirty box. He needs to turn it into a scrappy street fight kind of fight in there. And that's going to favour him more than trying to point pick at range and like be on the back foot and just pick his shots. Slim's not that kind of fighter. He wants to go forward and he's going to probably throw some looping hooks over the top and just try and get Temperrr out there. The final thing, obviously I've said that he would prefer a street fight, but for me, one thing that Slim actually does quite well is he actually feints. But sometimes when he gets carried away, he forgets to do these feints. Like, he uses them really well. I think it was at the beginning of the fight against NA Productions. He came out with kind of like that little herky-jerky style. He was throwing some feints, and that could be really useful because Faze Temperrr is a counter puncher. So if he starts getting Faze Temperrr to bite on these feints and start to throw back just when he's feinting, he can then capitalize on that and throw over the counters. So I think that could be very, very interesting if he uses those feints. But then again, at the same time, all that feinting, all that movement, it does zap your energy. So that's something that only Slim will really know. He'll know his own gas tank. He'll know how much of obviously he's put into his cardio. But those feints from Slim are very, very good. And I think they could be interesting to get Temperrr to bite. So that's just one other thing I thought of really. But I think overall Slim needs to make this a dirty fight, get inside, throw those punches, and just, yeah, try to rough up Temperrr and make him not comfortable in there at all, because he looked very comfortable against Kenny when he had his time, he had his own range, he had the composure to pick his own shots. So he needs to try and get that all thrown out the window and really take it to him in there. Right, overall prediction time. So my overall prediction for this fight is Faze Temperrr on points. I don't think either guy is going to be able to knock each other out in there. I think with Faze Temperrr, he's obviously had a longer training camp. His gas tank is going to be better than Slim's in there. He looked very, very composed. This is a big step up for Slim in terms of competition, I think, because his 3 past opponents haven't been that great. But at the same time, if Slim can make it a dirty fight in there, he definitely stands a chance. And like I said, if he can nick some of the earlier rounds and then maybe take a couple rounds off, get his wind back, and then nick another one towards the end, it could definitely be a draw, or he could even nick it on points. You never know. But I just think Faze Temperrr is very, very good. Like, I genuinely think he's gonna make it look pretty easy in there. Like, I think he's very skillful, and I think he's very calm and collected in there. And that's a difficult thing, especially when you've got an arena full of people cheering and screaming and stuff. So that's my prediction. We'll see how it goes. But if you've liked this video, please drop it a like, hit the subscribe button, and stay tuned for the next one of these videos, which will be coming tomorrow at 7:30 PM. And I'll speak to you then. Peace.